Can a reserve officer or other non-commissioned, non-certified officer in the state of New Mexico make a traffic stop? I'm going to tell you. New case from the New Mexico Supreme Court coming up. What's up, everybody? I'm attorney Eric Scramlin, and this is the Tactical In-Service Podcast, a podcast for law enforcement where I break down training topics and case law to help you, the law enforcement community, stay up on the law. Today, I got a brand new case from the New Mexico Supreme Court. It just came out yesterday. I read it this morning, broke it down. I'm going to try to do it live, tell you what you need to know about this case. So this is a case that's going to be for my New Mexico officers. This will not apply if you're not a New Mexico officer because this is a state-specific case. But New Mexico officers, you're going to want to know this one, especially if you're a reserve officer or a PSA, a public service aide, or if you're a supervisor and you're in charge of the policies for what your reserve officers or PSAs are doing out there. So what's the case? The case is State of New Mexico versus Sommer Wright, S-1-SC 37589. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can download, read the case for yourself. But hey, I'm going to try to break it down for you. So first of all, before I jump into the facts here, let me tell you what the issue was. So the issue has to do with a New Mexico Motor Vehicle Code statute, which is 66-8-124A. That's a statute that proscribes or prohibits any person from being arrested for violating the motor vehicle code or other law relating to motor vehicles, punishable as a misdemeanor except by a commissioned, salaried peace officer who at the time of arrest is wearing a uniform clearly indicating peace officer status. So the statute is saying that under the motor vehicle code, only a certified commissioned officer in New Mexico can arrest someone for a motor vehicle code or other motor vehicle related misdemeanor. All right, so we're not talking about felonies or misdemeanors outside the motor vehicle code. This specifically is a statute that says if you're non-certified, non-commissioned officer in New Mexico, you can't arrest somebody for motor vehicle code violations or misdemeanors related to the motor vehicle code. So that's the issue, was analyzing this. So you can already kind of tell where I'm going here. In this case, we had a Torrance County Reserve Deputy officer that, essentially, make a long story short, followed a vehicle that the reserve deputy said almost struck him on the side of the road. So this reserve deputy starts following the vehicle, doesn't turn the lights on, doesn't initiate a traffic stop, simply follows the vehicle, calls a certified deputy. That certified deputy says, I'll be there in like 4 or 5 minutes. The reserve deputy follows this person. They're doing like 85 and a 55. And then this person gets to their, apparently what seems to be their house, pulls into the driveway, hits a car in their driveway, backs out, almost hits the reserve officer again. And then at that point, when they pulled back in the driveway, the reserve deputy approached, introduced himself wearing a full uniform, marked patrol unit, and stated, hey, I'm reserve deputy, and I need you to sit tight. I have a deputy on the way. So is this a detention? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. That's essentially all that happened, because then 5 minutes later, the actual deputy gets there, takes over, does an investigation, fails field sobriety test, DWI 0.18. So again, going back to that issue, was you had a reserve deputy who essentially did a Terry stop by saying, sit tight, stay in your vehicle. That was a detention. Okay, but remember, the motor vehicle code statute says that only a certified officer can arrest someone. Well, the court talked about that in this case, because I'll tell you, the holding in this case was that failure to observe the requirements of 66-8-124A will result in an illegal arrest of the defendant, and that happened in this case, and it violated Article 2, Section 10 of New Mexico's Constitution. That's New Mexico's version of the Fourth Amendment. So the court held that you had a non-certified officer, the reserve deputy, who arrested someone in violation of this statute. Now, you might be saying, well, what evidence is there that the reserve deputy arrested this person? It sounds like a Terry stop. They just said, hey, sit tight, stay in your vehicle. You would be correct. except there's case law in New Mexico interpreting the term arrest as being a term of art. So under New Mexico's motor vehicle code, even a Terry stop type situation, a detention, equals an arrest under the motor vehicle code. So that means when the reserve deputy, according to the court, when the reserve deputy detained the person, didn't let them get out of the truck and leave to go in the house, ordering them to stay in that truck, that equaled an arrest under the motor vehicle code, not an arrest as we would think of it in other settings, which violated the statute. And by violating the statute, it violated New Mexico's Constitution. So all the evidence of the DWI was suppressed. Okay, so what are some key takeaways here that you should take from this case? Like I said, first of all, if you're a reserve officer, if you're a PSA, if you're any type of officer that's non-commissioned, non-certified in New Mexico, if you're the supervisors, if you're responsible for the policy, you're going to want to pay attention to this ruling, because this ruling should tell you that when you have these reserve officers or PSAs, they can't even make a Terry stop type of thing under the motor vehicle code. So we're only talking about motor vehicle code violations. They can't do that because it would be considered an arrest and violate New Mexico's Constitution. So you got to be aware of that. So key takeaway, kind of number 2, I guess we'll call it here, is that be aware that the court found this to be a violation of New Mexico law. This was not a Fourth Amendment violation. In fact, the court stated this would be totally fine under the Fourth Amendment. This violation was under New Mexico's interstitial approach. If you don't know what the interstitial approach is, I explain it in a few of my videos. I think I'll have one scroll up here. That's a good one. Take a listen to it, where I explain New Mexico's interstitial approach. That is New Mexico's specific law. That's why you got to know New Mexico law. Fourth Amendment law doesn't always apply, because if you were going by Fourth Amendment law, then you'd have a different result here. This is New Mexico's specific law. All right, next takeaway that you should take from this, kind of already mentioned it, but for your reserve officers, PSAs, non-commissioned, non-certified officers, the court held that the reserve deputy's actions, even in this temporary detention, equaled an arrest, just for the purposes of the motor vehicle code. So that means the reserve deputy violated the statute, because you can't arrest under the statute for motor vehicle code violations. The court, my next takeaway that you should take from this is, how did the court get to this decision? They got to this decision by doing what we call the balancing test. That's where the court looks at kind of the societal impact, like DWI, what's the impact it has on society, versus intruding on the private citizen's rights. The court found in this case that the evidence indicated that but for the reserve deputy ordering the person to stay in the vehicle, she was going to get out, go in her house, go to sleep, and be no danger to the community. That's what the evidence suggested according to the lower court. Versus the fact that we can't, I guess it's not versus, but we can't really show under these circumstances that there would have been a continued risk. And the court found it is a major privacy violation when you have somebody not being able to go into their house, because this person was prevented from going to their house. Major privacy violation. Finally, I think one more thing that I'd like you guys to take from this is that, the court finds that this person, this reserve deputy in this case, was not a sworn certified peace officer as contemplated under the statute here, and that detention equaled an arrest under case law. So this is specific to the motor vehicle code is what I'm getting at. All right. Under that balancing test, it equaled a violation in this specific case. Now, if the facts were to change just a little bit, you could have a totally different answer here, because the court uses that balancing test. So you also don't have to take this case as gospel because of the balancing test. For example, if you change a little fact, if that person's not going into their house and they're intoxicated and they're getting back in their vehicle to continue driving, I think the balancing test swings the other way, because now you have a massive interest in preventing that person from driving. So it's not a clear-cut thing, but I still would say the best advice is we have to talk to our PSAs, our non-certified officers, and make sure they understand this case, that even if you detain someone, it will be considered an arrest, which is a violation of the state statute, which means all the evidence gets suppressed. And yes, under the New Mexico Civil Rights Act, could result in a lawsuit because this is a constitutional violation. So I hope this helps. I hope it gives you a little bit of understanding of this case. If you have any questions about the case, you can leave them in the comments below. You can go to my website at tacticalattorney.com. You can contact me. I'd be happy to answer questions about the case. Now, I can't give legal advice on anything specific, but I can give you some general answers to questions that you might have about the case law. I know it's a little complicated, but essentially it's the clear-cut decision here is if you're a non-certified officer, you can't stop someone under the motor vehicle code. So that's what the case is telling us. I hope that helps you guys out. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you take any value from this podcast, I wouldn't mind having a subscribe smash button thing down there. And if you are looking for courses, I'm about to release my online courses. Go to my website, tacticalattorney.com. I got New Mexico specific courses coming out that you can access on demand. And of course, I'm available to come to your department, and we'll have some seminars, also have some conferences in person that are going to be coming up. So go to the website, check it out. Give me a call. I'd love to come to your department and do some training there as well. Until next time, remember, every battle is won before it's fought. Stay safe. See you in the next episode.